The following is an exclusive presentation of Bragging Rights Sports. Invite Secretary to break. Let's go to War Messagas. What the heck is going on? This is the Heckling With Hession podcast. Yeah.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's episode of Heckling with Hession. I'm your host, Michael Hession, founder of Bragging Rights Sports, and today we are donning a new segment which will take place every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon right here on Bragging Rights Sports. You can find the audio for this on our website, braggingrightsports.com, and you can also find the live video reaction of this on our YouTube channel. So let's get right to it.
Yeah.
Our first topic of discussion for today is Game 7 of the American League Championship Series between the Seattle Mariners and the Toronto Blue Jays. The Mariners took a 3-1 lead going into the bottom of the seventh, but they were undone by one swing and one swing only. That being a 3-run home run off the bat of George Springer, the Mariner killer, as Houston fans would like to put it, as the Blue Jays ended up coming back from a 3-1 deficit en route to their first World Series appearance since 1993. Let me put it this way. Toronto and the 3-run homer, what a combination that is, because 1993, Joe Carter hit a 3-run walk-off home run against Mitch Williams to win the 1993 World Series for the Blue Jays. And as Tom Cheek once said, touch 'em all, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger home run in your life. And he was right. Rest in peace, by the way. Then you had Jose Bautista's 3-run home run off Sam Dyson in the 7th inning of Game 5 of the 2015 ALDS, which gave the Blue Jays the lead for good. And then you had Edwin Encarnacion's 3-run walk-off home run against the Baltimore Orioles in the 2016 AL wildcard game. And then last night, and everyone is going to be second-guessing why the Mariners didn't bring in Andres Munoz, who has been their all-star closer. And here's my argument as to why they didn't put him in. It's only the 7th inning. You can still have Munoz in the game for the 8th and 9th inning. And remember, there were Blue Jay fans that were saying that George Springer shouldn't have even started in the game. Like, I know he had a dud of a series going into that, and people were saying that he shouldn't start, but here's the thing. George Springer over the last decade or so has been one of the best playoff hitters in baseball. And last night, he added to his reputation, which he started in Houston. So, in my opinion, this series was about as good a playoff series as it gets, especially for this year, because there have been a lot of dud series. You had the Dodgers sweeping the Brewers. We will get to that in just a bit. And not to mention, you've got the Dodgers really dominated everybody. They swept the Reds, beat the Phillies, and then swept the Brewers. And as I said, we'll get to that series in a little bit. But you also had the Mariners against the Tigers. And I thought Detroit would roll over, especially after collapsing the way they did in the second half. But to be fair, they took down Cleveland, got their revenge for last year. And with Tariq Skubal on the mound for Game 5 against Seattle, I thought Detroit was going to win that and set up a 4-1 rivalry between them and the Blue Jays, but Jorge Polanco had other plans. So if you were to tell me that the Mariners, after winning the first 2 games at Skydome, the way they did, would lose that series, I would have laughed through the roof. But this is the world we live in, and these are the hands we're given. And to the Blue Jays' credit, they didn't whimper. They blew out Seattle in Game 3 despite giving up a 2-run homer to J-Rod early in the game. And then in Game 4, the same thing happened, and Seattle let Max Scherzer dominate them. Max Scherzer. I know he's not what he was in Washington or Detroit, but you're letting a guy in his early 40s dominate you, Seattle. But if I'm the Mariners, I'm not treating this season as a failure for this reason and this reason only. They had the mantra of the 54% narrative, which was we're going to win 54% of our games every single year and see if we can make the playoffs. This year, they bolted past that. And I get Houston collapsed this year to the point where who knows how long their empire is going to stand up. But Seattle earned the right to win that division. They earned the right to win a 15-inning epic against the Detroit Tigers in Game 5. And look at Game 5 of the ALCS. When Eugenio Suarez hit that grand slam, it looked like an Edgar Martinez type moment where he hits the second homer of the game. It's a grand slam. They're going to go on and win the series. But I knew even with that, the series was still far from over because you have to remember, the Toronto Sky Dome, in my opinion, is the most hostile environment in all of baseball. I've been to 29 of the 30 major league ballparks. Out of the ones I've been to, Toronto is, in my opinion, the loudest of the 29 parks I've been to. And I went there during the summer of 2016. Like, my point is this. Whenever the Toronto Blue Jays are in contention for either a playoff spot or the American League pennant, that is a raucous environment, and Seattle had to learn the hard way. And I knew once Addison Varger hit that home run in Game 6 that put Toronto up 4-0, I think it was, I knew Seattle was going to have a hard time coming back. Because when that crowd is going in Toronto, it is as I mentioned, it's an intimidating atmosphere. And if you're the visiting team, you're going to have to play a darn near perfect game to win. And unfortunately for the Seattle Mariners, their enchanted season ended on a bad day. And I think they'll be back. As long as they can lock up Suarez and Josh Naylor, they'll be fine. And even though Julio Rodriguez struck out to end the game, he had a great game. He had 3 hits, including a home run, and the home run he hit off Shane Bieber, that was a hanger right in the middle of the zone that he absolutely jolted out of the ballpark. So there's that, and now we get to our second conversation. The World Series matchup is officially set, and it is going to feature the Los Angeles Dodgers against the Toronto Blue Jays. All right, give me an edit. All right, let me find it. And now let's play it. Now let's play the song. Yeah. So topic number 2 is the World Series matchup is officially set. For the first time since 1993, a World Series game will be played in Canada. And the last time the World Series was played in Toronto, the Blue Jays took down the Phillies 4-2, thanks to Joe Carter hitting a 3-run homer off Mitch Williams. So in the National League Championship Series, the Dodgers took down the Milwaukee Brewers 4-0. And just like the Mariners, you can't blame the Brewers at all. And I know they hit only 100 in the series, but every single pitcher that they went up against on the Dodgers is making at least $300 million. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow, Blake Snell, and obviously Shohei Ohtani. And we thought that Shohei Ohtani's greatest performance was last year when he almost hit for the cycle and had a 3-homer game against the Marlins on a day where he became the first player in Major League history to join the 50-50 club. But I think it is safe to say that he topped it in Game 4 of the NLCS. And here's why. He had not 1, not 2, but 3 home runs in a series-clinching game, and he struck out 10 batters while pitching 6 shutout innings. And I was commenting with the 360 Sports group chat. Make sure you guys go check that out. I will put the link in the description on Bragging Rights Sports and on the YouTube page once this video comes out. But I'm telling you, that chat blew up once. I said, he's going to pitch a shutout and hit a 3-homer game. Just you watch. And when he did that, I said, I am freaking Nostradamus. How could I have guessed that this whole time? And well, I'm a genius. Why? Because I knew what was coming. And I'm not afraid to make I'm not afraid to make bold comments like that. But anyways, you just knew after Blake Snell pitched the way he did in game one, throwing 8 shutout innings and shutting down a Brewers lineup that really had done well against the Cubs because they scored a lot of runs early in that series. Because like I remember in the first game of that series, they scored 9 runs in the first 2 innings against the Cubs. And this was their revenge series for Craig Counsell leaving Milwaukee to go to Chicago, obviously for more money, but you could just tell that everyone in Wisconsin wanted to beat him. Anyways, but then you had Yamamoto throwing a complete game shutout in game 2, and as I mentioned, you have Andrew Vaughn, you have Christian Yelich bouncing back to elite form, you have an emerging star in Jackson Chourio, and Bryce Terang is another emerging star. This was no scrub lineup that the Brewers were trotting out. They were top 5 in almost every single offensive category in the National League. It's just the problem for them is the Dodgers have all the money and can spend left and right. And I have a feeling that if they win the World Series, there is going to be a lockout in the eyes of every Major League Baseball fan, myself included. But that is a whole nother topic, which I should say, no, we will get to that right now because the blame for why there should be a lockout isn't on the Dodgers. It's on 6 small market teams. The Colorado Rockies, the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Tampa Bay Rays, the Oakland/Las Vegas Athletics, the LA Angels. Well, the LA Angels, they're on a small market team, but they play in Anaheim despite being labeled as LA. But you know, we can gloat about that all we want. And who is this? Oh, the Minnesota Twins. Those 6 franchises are the reason why I don't think there's going to be a salary cap. Because, yes, the New York Mets, Los Angeles Dodgers, New York Yankees, and Philadelphia Phillies all of them have spent, their payroll this year is over $400 million. We can argue about that all we want, but like, so much of baseball nowadays is small market owners not willing to spend the money. And in the case of Dick Monfort, the owner of the Rockies, he spends just enough to try and get fans attracted and come on down to the ballpark, which makes sense because Coors Field is arguably the biggest bar in the city of Denver. But like the others, I don't understand. Like the Pirates have such a beautiful ballpark and a passionate fan base, and why is Bob Nutting not willing to spend the money? And the Twins, they had an ownership change. Well, the Bullats still own the team, but they haven't been the same since the main one passed away several years ago. And before then, like they were spending money as well for a small market team, which worked out well for them. And then the A's didn't spend it all in Oakland, and once the move to Las Vegas was announced, boom, they signed Luis Severino right out of the gates. And they're probably going to spend a lot once they get to Vegas as well. And I was there in Oakland a couple years ago when they played the Rangers, and one of the fans that was sitting behind me at that game was saying, "Sell the team, John Fisher." Well, I don't think he's going to sell the team because now he's going to have one of the biggest media market. Well, I don't think Vegas is that big of a media market. It's just a destination. And if the A's have the same impact that the Vegas Golden Knights have, oh boy. All right. Enough trashing of small market teams. I think we're good on that. Now we have to talk about the 2025 World Series. And now it's for real.
Yeah.
So for the first, as we mentioned, the Los Angeles Dodgers and Toronto Blue Jays will start up the World Series on Friday night. First pitch start time set for 8:07 Eastern. The Dodgers are trying to become the first team since the Yankees of the Joe Torre era to win consecutive World Series championships. And speaking of that, the Toronto Blue Jays are the death at both their championships were just like that. Because in 1992 and 1993, the Jays won back-to-back World Series, and they could have won a third. Well, they could have won a third in 91 had Joe Carter not gotten injured, as did Dave Steve. If those two were healthy, they probably won it all in 1991, and we probably don't hear of the Jack Morris versus John Smoltz Game 7 Classic. And the same with 94. I know they were under 500 right when the strike was hitting, but they were hitting their stride. They were getting healthy, and and look at the lineup that the Blue Jays had in the early 90s. Ricky Henderson, Devon White, Paul Molitor, Joe Carter, John Olerud, Roberto Alomar. That was their top six in 1993. In 1992, it was no different because you also had Kelly Gruber, who was a longtime cornerstone for the Blue Jay franchise, and Dave Winfield, who at age 41 was still one of the best hitters in baseball. And what's interesting about Winfield when he was with Toronto in the early 90s, I should say he was only there for 92 and he was replaced by Paul Molitor. But in 92, he thought he was commenting for an article made by Candy Maldonado late in the 1992 season. And he says, if this team were to go further than they've ever been before, it would be important that the fans would make their presence known. And there was a narrative starting to spread that year saying Winfield wants noise. And guess what? He arguably delivered the biggest hit in Blue Jay history, not named Joe Carter, when he drove in Devon White and Robbie Alomar in Game 6 of the 1992 World Series to put the Braves out of their misery. But they're going up against now a team that has been the envy of baseball. They're a franchise that makes the Yankees look humble in comparison. And just like the Yankees in the George Steinbrenner era, the Dodgers have spent the money. And who was it? One New York sports columnist, I don't know who it was, he said in a 2003 documentary, he said, we all know that George Steinbrenner, whenever there's a premium free agent that everybody wants, George makes up his mind and says, he's going to get this guy. That is the same for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Every time there's a premium free agent out there that everybody wants, they make up their minds and say they're going to get them. And here's what they've got going for them. Dodger Stadium is in a cool setting in Chavez Ravine, right near Hollywood. You've got, obviously, the LA market. You get a lot of endorsements. And not to mention, you have such a great culture. And for as much as criticism as Dave Roberts has received as a manager, he is a great culture builder. There's rarely seems to be any drama coming out of that locker room in Los Angeles. And that's the thing, because like the LA media is usually very negative towards the Lakers. Because like the last couple years when the Lakers were struggling, they were trying to get Frank Vogel fired, and they did. They tried to get Darvin Ham fired, and they did. And if the Lakers struggle this year, I have a very strong feeling that there's going to be serious consideration of getting J.J. Redick fired. And it also doesn't help that LeBron's over there. But back to what we were saying about the Dodgers. The Dodgers, they're the franchise that everybody loves to hate. And they have arguably the three biggest contracts in all of sports. And you got Shohei Ohtani, who's making $70 million a year. You've got Yamamoto, who's making over $50 million a year. And not to mention Mookie Betts' contract is also I think it's in the 40s. But they've got some of the biggest contracts in baseball history. And those deals will probably all be deferred in the 2040s. Don't hate the player, hate the game. That is all I'm going to say about people's questions towards the Dodgers. But look at them this year. Their pitching staff was decimated by injury. Tony Gonsolin injured. Julio Urias, he had off the field issues. I don't know if he's going to pitch again. It's another Trevor Bauer situation. And this is the last ride, obviously, of Clayton Kershaw. But once they got to the playoffs, this reminded me a lot of the 2023 Kansas City Chiefs in the sense that it doesn't matter what you did in the regular season. It doesn't matter if you squandered games left and right. All that matters is once you get in the playoffs, none of that matters. And here's what baffles me the most about this World Series matchup coming from an Orioles fan. I was there when the Orioles played the Blue Jays, the day that the Orioles donned their all orange throwbacks for the first time since the 1970s. And I was also there in the summer for a double header. And the Orioles won all 3 games against the Blue Jays that I was at. And if you were to tell me that that Toronto team that the Orioles beat the crap out of in a bunch of those games would go on to make the World Series, I would have laughed your ass out of the window. I know, but it comes to show you that home field advantage is absolutely critical. And who had the best home record in baseball this year? The Toronto Blue Jays. And who has been one of the best hitters at home in baseball this year? Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And here's the scary thing. Bo Bichette hasn't even played in this postseason. He's expected to come back during the World Series. And they're gonna get a huge boost with him hitting near the top of the line. The question is, do they rush him back? I think they do because of who they're going up against. So all eyes will be on John Schneider to see what he does with Bo Bichette going into the World Series. And then not to mention the Dodgers. The Dodgers played the Orioles on the 30th anniversary weekend of 21-31. And Sam Basello hit a walk-off home run against Tanner Scott on Friday night. And the Saturday night game is insane as well because Yamamoto was 1 out away from pitching a no-hitter on the 30th anniversary of when Cal Ripken Jr. broke Lou Gehrig's record for most consecutive games played. And then Jackson Holliday hits a home run and to make it 4-1. And then you had Scott basically walked the bases loaded. And then who was it? Emmanuel Rivera, who Orioles fans were still questioning why he got playing time over Jordan Westburg. He singles up the middle, scores 2 runs, and the Orioles win the game 5-4. If you were to tell me that Dodgers team and that Blue Jays team that lost those games to the O's the way they did would go on to make the World Series, I would laugh so hard. But truth is stranger than fiction, and I'm telling you this. Whoever wins the World Series, there will be endless coping and seething from not just the losing fan base, but fans around baseball. Because remember last year when the World Series was Yankees versus Dodgers? You're seeing the same thing here. Because it's LA, the Dodgers, who have the biggest payroll in baseball history, and a team that's probably worth like $5 billion based on how much money they've spent over the last 5 years in particular. And not to mention they're the defending champions, and most of that team is coming back. You have them, but also you have the entire country of Canada. And think about this. Canadian fans were already insufferable over the Four Nations tournament where Connor McDavid scored the game-winning goal against Team USA in front of a rabid crowd at TD Garden. You already had that going for you, and they prevented Donald Trump from making the 51st state narrative. But I think it's safe to say that after last night, Toronto fans are calling Seattle the 11th province. But who could blame them? Who could blame them? And it's either we're going to get LA insufferability or Canadian insufferability. But enough baseball talk for now. I think it's time we get into another major topic of discussion, and that just happens to be a league that is opening their regular season tonight, the NBA. Yeah. So last night, I was on Penn State Sports Night doing the NBA preview segment. Make sure you guys go check that out. I'm going to edit that segment with my 2 on-air colleagues later this afternoon. So if you guys want to go check out that preview, I recommend that you highly do so. But anyways, this NBA season is going to be full of chaos and parity. And every year when I've done like the NBA Finals preview, I have said that there is more parity in the league than ever. It seems to keep changing because there's just been so much young talent coming into this league. And not to mention, since the Milwaukee Bucks won the NBA title in 2021, the super team narratives have been dead. And you know why they've been dead? Because the Bucks proved, as well as the 2019 Raptors and the 2022 Warriors, among other teams, that it's not about attracting superstars to your glamorous city. It's about roster construction, team chemistry, coaching, front office decisions. You have to have depth, and you have to have depth all across your roster. Like, all these teams that have won championships now, they're deep teams. It's not like you could just have like 3 or 4 superstars on your team and have no depth or coaching around them. Like, that's what the Brooklyn Nets tried to do. That's what the Los Angeles Lakers tried to do. That's what the Phoenix Suns tried to do once they fired Monty Williams. You can't do that in today's NBA anymore. You just can't. You know why? Because there are so many teams that have good coaching and good roster construction with excellent front offices who know what they're doing. I know. I can say whatever I want about that. But anyways, so tonight we have 2 games starting up, and those being the Houston Rockets traveling to Oklahoma City to watch the Thunder raise their 2025 NBA banner. And that is basically the NBA telling OKC to give Kevin Durant the middle finger, because Kevin Durant, one of the greatest players of this generation, one of the greatest players in the history of the Thunder franchise, if not the greatest player in Thunder history, is coming back as a member of the Houston Rockets to Oklahoma City to watch his former team raise the banner. And here's the thing. This isn't the first time that Kevin Durant has felt slated by a team raising a championship banner in front of him. Because you have to remember, in 2022, when the Milwaukee Bucks won the title the previous year, guess who their opening game was against? The Brooklyn Nets. And the Bucks had defeated the Nets in a classic 7-game series, which, in my opinion, is probably the most insane 7-game series I've ever covered. Nets fans, bandwagons or not, had to watch the Bucks raise that banner. And I'm telling you, when that happened, I knew the game was over, because I knew that the Bucks were going to blow the Nets right out the door that night, and they did. And Kevin Durant did not look like himself. Because, think about this. Bucks fans were chanting FKD, which during games 3, 4, and 6 of that second-round series between the Bucks and Nets. And I've been to Fiserv Forum plenty of times. That fan base in Wisconsin is full of some of the nicest people you'll meet. They weren't that way in that series, and the reason why is because I re-quoted Michael Wilbon during The Last Dance. I said, everyone in Milwaukee hated the Nets. This was personal. And even if they said it wasn't personal, it was personal. And you wonder why? Because the Bucks had the best record in the Eastern Conference in 2019 and 2020. And the Nets were getting all the attention because they had KD, Kyrie, Harden, Blake Griffin. I could go on and on about that. But the Bucks fans felt slated. And not to mention, Durant was heckling with PJ Tucker during that series. And once he saw that the Bucks rose that banner in 2022, he thought he had no chance. And he was right, because they ended up winning by 23 points. I could see the same thing happening tonight with him and Amen Thompson and Alfred Şengün and the Rockets. Because, think about this. The Rockets are a good young team. They made a ton of strides as an organization last year, but unfortunately they ran into their boogeyman known as Dub Nation in the first round of the playoffs despite coming back from a 3-1 deficit to force a Game 7. But the big blow for Houston is no Fred VanVleet. He tore his ACL, and he is out long term. So, in my opinion, if I'm the Rockets, I've got nothing to lose. I'm using and Ime Udoka, who I think is a very good coach, and he's proved that his run in Boston wasn't a fluke. I think he has shown those Rocket players that championship parade and saying, this is what OKC did last year. This is what we can do now. And a lot of teams that you have to watch an opponent of theirs raise the banner on the opening night, they can either feel shell-shocked or they can be motivated. Look at the New York Knicks last year. They saw the Celtics raise the championship banner in front of them and used that to their advantage because they knocked Boston out of the playoffs last year. And the Knicks, we will get to that in just a bit. We will get to that in a little bit. But right now, we have to talk about the big game tonight, in my opinion. A rivalry that is as old as time. And it can be summed up by two simple words. Actually, no, three words, because there's also a versus in there because it is a rivalry. But anyways, who do we got playing tonight out in Los Angeles at the Crypto.com Arena?
Yeah.
It's LA versus the Bay, ladies and gentlemen. It is the Golden State Warriors against the Los Angeles Lakers, one of the most heated rivalries in the NBA right now. And I'm telling you, as a Warriors fan, it does not matter what the records of those two teams are. When those two get together, you expect high drama. And both those teams have a lot of uncertainty going into the season. And we'll start with the Golden State Warriors. Last year, they were 10th in the Western Conference when they made that trade for Jimmy Butler. And they skyrocketed up to one point up to 5th in the conference. And the only reason I feel like that they didn't get out of the play, get out a regular playoff seed and were forced to play in the play-in tournament was because of one simple reason: ref ball. And I know some people will say the Warriors get all the calls for so many years. I think during like 2017 and 2018, they were correct. But now, I don't think so. You know why? The NBA has catered so much to LeBron James over the years. The chosen one, the king, making all, like, who in this day and age is going to make a free agent decision on national television? Only LeBron. But anyways, there was just animosity with this matchup because I wanted these two teams to play in the first round so bad. I wanted the Warriors to win that last game against the Los Angeles Clippers to set up a first round series between them and the Lakers. And if they'd played last year in the first round, I think the Warriors would have crushed them. And here's why. The biggest advantage that Golden State had going into that hypothetical playoff series would have been coaching. And I know the Lakers were putting all their eggs in the basket of Jackson Hayes, who their fan base hyped up at the time as the next Pau Gasol. Really? You really think he was going to be as good as Pau Gasol was? What the heck is wrong with you? But JJ Redick, in my opinion, is another Steve Nash. Like, look at him against Minnesota in that first round playoff series. He's not playing any of his bench guys in the second half of Game 4. They deserve to lose that series based on that alone. And the only reason it wasn't a sweep was because the refs bailed them out in Game 2. That's why I think if the Lakers can't get out of their own way, they're in trouble. Because, like, think about this. Now that Luka Doncic is on board, and obviously the LeBron factor, Adam Silver's going to do everything he can to make sure that LA gets a deep run in the playoffs. But it's going to be up to them to prove those narratives right. Like, you can have the aid of ref ball all you want. You can have as many superstars as you want. But if you don't have a structure around those guys, you're in trouble. And last year, the Lakers did not have a structure. I do like the idea of them signing DeAndre Ayton in the offseason, but I don't know if Ayton is as good as he was in Phoenix. Because when he was with the Suns, he was good. But then the last couple years in Portland, what can you say? What can you say about him? But I think tonight, for the Warriors-Lakers game, I think there's going to be a lot of drama down the stretch. I think Golden State's going to win the game for this reason and this reason only. Coaching. As I mentioned, Steve Kerr has a massive edge in coaching experience over JJ Redick. JJ Redick, as I mentioned, is another Steve Nash. And I think if JJ Redick isn't able to make any second half adjustments to Steph Curry, because if he plays Doncic or Austin Reeves on Steph Curry, game over. Game over. And last year he played Doncic on Anthony Edwards, and look how that turned out. Although Edwards wasn't the reason they won that series, it was Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle, who Lakers fans both considered scrubs. You shouldn't have said our dynasty was over back in 2023. That's all I'm going to say right now. And I almost forgot the Warriors signed Al Horford in the offseason. And I think the Horford edition, it's a low-key steal. Because I know Horford's in his late 30s, soon to be in his 40s, but he still can add value. He's a hard worker, he's still a good defender, and he can shoot the three. And in the Warriors offense, that is neat. Because look at their starting five. It's probably gonna be Curry, Buddy Hield, Jimmy Butler, Draymond, Al Horford. And then you've got Podziemski, Moody, and Quentin Post, among others, off that bench. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The Warriors' biggest enemy this year is themselves. If they play up to their potential, the only team that I think can stop them in the Western Conference is Oklahoma City. And I just think that if Steph and Jimmy Butler are able to stay healthy, they've got a chance to get a high seed in the Western Conference. And I'm not saying that because I'm biased. I'm saying that because with their coaching staff, with their player development, and their experience, they've got a chance to really make themselves known as a Western Conference contender. So while we talked about the Western Conference, now let's get into the Eastern Conference, which, in the words of the legendary Phil Collins, is seen as the land of confusion.
Yeah.
I made this narrative last night on Penn State Sports Night that if the Knicks don't win the NBA championship, I shouldn't say win the championship, but at least get to the finals, that every Knicks fan in the New York area should be going after team president Leon Rose. And you've already fired Thibodeau. You've already traded your entire future to the Nets and Timberwolves for Mikal Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns. You're giving Jalen Brunson all that he's ever wanted. And look at the Eastern Conference. Jason Tatum, out long-term. Tyrese Halliburton, done for the season most likely. The Hawks are a young team. We don't know what to think of them. The Magic obviously made that big move for Desmond Bane, and I don't know what to think of them either because they're still a young team, and I don't know what's going to happen with Paolo Banchero and all those young guys that they've got. Don't get me wrong, Orlando's a good team, but some people have them as the second best team in the East. I'm not buying that just yet. I need to see that with my own two eyes. I need to see that with my own two eyes before I can judge them. And then not to mention, the Milwaukee Bucks are at a crossroads. They obviously signed Miles Turner to that big contract, but we don't know what's going to happen with Giannis Antetokounmpo long term. They didn't bring back Damian Lillard, which, in my opinion, is another Jimmy Haslam mistake, which he's learned nothing from the Deshaun Watson trade in Cleveland. And then you've got the Philadelphia 76ers, who right now I think are an absolute mystery box. Because think about this. Joel Embiid was out most of last year. They draft VJ Ejikambe out of the Bahamas, who actually, he's from the Bahamas, but he only played 1 year at Baylor. So we don't know what to think of him, and we also don't know whether or not Embiid is going to stay healthy. And the good news for them is that Tyrese Maxey had his coming out party, and Jared McCann has really come of age as well. The thing is, if Jared McCain and Tyrese Maxey are healthy, as is Paul George, if Paul George doesn't prove that last year's a fluke, the Sixers could be the low-key sleeper of the Eastern Conference. And which would be ironic because this year they're bringing back their 2001 throwbacks. Allen Iverson, great. But as I said, in my opinion, the biggest mystery box in the Eastern Conference is the Philadelphia 76ers. If McCain and Maxey prove that they're one of the best guard combos in the league, and if Joel Embiid can stay healthy, they've got a chance to challenge for the number one seed in the Eastern Conference. Their situation reminds me a lot of 2021 because there was a lot of uncertainty going into that year, whether or not, Ben Simmons was going to be what he was, whether Embiid would stay healthy, et cetera, et cetera. But they got the number 1 seed all right. They're like, James Harden, don't need him. Best team in the Eastern Conference, try to get the fans hope. But then they lost to Atlanta in Game 7. But right now with the Sixers, my biggest concern is Nick Nurse. Is he that good of a coach, or was he carried to relevance by Kawhi Leonard and Drake? That's the concern I have for Nick Nurse, because outside of 2019 and 2020, he has been mediocre. He's been mediocre for most of his coaching career, and we're going to see whether or not he has the guns to take the Sixers to that next level, and that next level is finally getting past the second round for the first time since 2001, which further proves that they're the Washington Capitals of the NBA. And back to the Knicks. I said last night, all the stars are aligning for them, and also the Cleveland Cavaliers, and we'll start with the Cavs right now, then we'll get back to the Knicks. The Cavaliers, in my opinion, they've got everything to lose this year. You've invested so much in Darius Garland. You've invested in so much in Evan Mobley. The same can go for Donovan Mitchell, who they threw a king's ransom to Utah to get, and Jarrett Allen. Those 4 guys, along with the big trade for DeAndre Hunter last year, this has to be the year that they get to at least, they don't have to get to the finals. They have to get to the Eastern Conference Finals at minimum. Although last year, in their defense, I can't judge them because they went up against a team that was the worst possible matchup for them in the Indiana Pacers. Because a third of their losses last year were to the Pacers, who matched up very well with their strengths. And Indiana last year, if not for the first couple months of the year, was the best team in the Eastern Conference by a wide margin. And with Halliburton and Miles Turner not being there this year, Turner leaving in free agency and Halliburton being injured, they've got an uphill battle. But who knows if Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nembhard become stars right out of the gate. And knowing the Pacers and their development system, that could very well happen. It could absolutely very, very well happen. But this has to be the year Cleveland gets to the conference finals. And speaking of a team that got to the conference finals, the Knicks. And I've talked about them more than anyone on Sportsline, and that's despite the fact that I'm a diehard Warriors fan. And here's why. This is a team that plays in the New York market, that has not been to the finals since 1999, and has all the talent in the world. Look at their starting 5. Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Karl Anthony Towns. You're telling me that if this team cannot get to the NBA Finals this year with that starting 5, and not to mention Jordan Clarkson and Miles McBride and Mitchell Robinson on the bench. Like, that's the thing. You have Mitchell Robinson, McBride, and Clarkson on the bench. And hopefully Landry Shamet returns to what he was in Brooklyn. But if they can't get to the finals with this much talent, Leon Rose is on SOS alert. He is. And this year, they're trying everything they can to get to the finals. Because, I was not a fan of them firing Tom Thibodeau. I think he's a good coach, but after making the Eastern Conference Finals, I'm like, you know what? Just give him another year and see how he does. But I get why they fired him. I mentioned this last year, that James Dolan, who owns the Knicks and the Rangers, he fired Gerard Gallant after the Rangers' all-in year crumbled in 2023 when they lost to the New Jersey Devils in Game 7 of the first round. And that led to one of my favorite memes of all time. No quit in New York. Well, you sure as hell quit after Game 3. The Devils took them to the cleaners. That's what the Pacers did in the first 2 games at Madison Square Garden in that Eastern Conference Finals last year. The last 2 minutes in overtime of Game 1 plus most of Game 2, they took the Knicks to the cleaners. And now the Knicks had to bring in Mike Brown as their head coach. Because I'm telling you this. Mike Brown, in my opinion, is a better coach than people give him credit for. Like, seriously, Mike Brown's a better coach than people give him credit for because he went to the Lakers and kept them afloat. And the only reason he got fired was because Kobe Bryant got injured, and not to mention he lost the power struggle with Jeannie Buss. Or I should say Jerry Buss, because Jeannie Buss didn't take over until Jerry Buss said, I've had enough meddling this team. And then Mike Brown goes to the Warriors, and he's Steve Kerr's right-hand man for half a decade. He comes in when Kerr has to take a leave of absence because of an illness back in 2017. The Warriors win 15 consecutive playoff games with Mike Brown as the interim head coach. And yes, they had the death lineup of Curry, Thompson, Iguodala, Durant, and Draymond. Yes, that is true. They had the death lineup, which is, in my opinion, the most potent starting five possibly in NBA history. All five of those guys are probably going to be in the Hall of Fame. But someone had to lead the way. And Mike Brown did a great job handling that situation as well as he did. And then he goes to Sacramento. And you have to remember this. The Sacramento Kings had not been in the playoffs since the George W. Bush administration going into 2023. They were the joke of the Western Conference for 15 years. And then he takes them to the first round of the playoffs where he gets beat by Steve Kerr in Game 7, but you can't, and the Warriors in Game 7, but you can't blame him. You cannot blame that Kings team for losing the way they did in the first round. But his undoing in Sacramento wasn't anything he did. It was Vivek Ranadive. If there's one thing you don't do, you do not trade away De'Aaron Fox. Well, he traded Fox after Mike Brown got fired, but also, like, they shouldn't have traded Kevin Huerter in the offseason for DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan is a great player statistically, but he's not the kind of player that can get a team over the top. And Kevin Huerter is not better than DeRozan, but he was a better fit in their scheme. And if they don't trade Huerter, in my opinion, Brown is still there. Now he's coming to the Knicks. And unlike the Lakers and the Kings, he's going to a team that just made it to the conference finals, is returning most of their roster, and now, and you also have to consider that Brown is a very good teaching coach. If the Kings confused. If the Knicks get to the finals with Mike Brown as their head coach, it comes to show you that he should not have been fired by the Lakers or the Kings at any point, and it comes to show you how inept those organizations were at any point. But that's enough NBA talk for now. We need to go to, obviously, the main American sports, which has been getting a lot of, in my opinion, chaos written to the bone, and that is the National Football League, in what is, in my opinion, the year of drama. If you were to tell me that the best team in football through the first 7 games of the season would be the Indianapolis Colts, I would be laughing my brains off. If you go back and look at my preseason, if you go back and look at my preseason predictions, I had the Indianapolis Colts as the worst team in the AFC. I had them finishing 4-13 because I had no idea how good Daniel Jones was going to be. If we're blaming anyone for the start of Daniel Jones' rise, it's David Ojabo and the Baltimore Ravens. When Ojabo beat the living crap out of Anthony Richardson in that first preseason game, I thought Indianapolis was doomed. Then Danny Derps becomes Indiana Jones. And if not for Adonai Mitchell, the Colts would be undefeated. That's how good they've been this year. And everyone's going to say, it's Daniel Jones. It's all him and Jonathan. Like, those are too good. Like, Daniel Jones has proven how inept of an organization the Giants have been, just like Saquon did last year with the Eagles. And not to mention, you've got Jonathan Taylor, who's proven that his decline the last couple years was a fluke. To me, the biggest key of the Indianapolis Colts is none of those two guys. It's a rookie. Tyler Warren, formerly of the Penn State Nittany Lions. And considering that Penn State is now 3-4 and under 500 for the first time since 2004 at this point in the season, Well, if you exclude COVID year, that is. The fact that Penn State football is under 500, it comes to show you that their success was not the result of Andy Koldenicki. It was Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren carried that offense from start to finish that year. Like, he did everything. He lined up at quarterback. He lined up at wide receiver, running back, tight end. He even played center for crying out loud during a point in last year. And the fact that Penn State's offense has struggled this year is a result of how much they miss him. And look at what Warren's done in Indianapolis. He leads the NFL in receiving yards for a tight end. He's probably going to shatter the rookie record for receiving yards by a tight end in a season. In my opinion, he is the offensive rookie of the year, and it's not even close because the Colts offense would not be what it is today without Tyler Warren. And you know who we're also blaming? The Bears, because they could have drafted Tyler Warren 10th overall, and they chose Colston Loveland out of Michigan. And don't get me wrong, Colston Loveland's a good player with the Bears, but he's not Tyler Warren. And people were saying last year that Harold Fannin was a better tight end than Tyler Warren last year. Tyler Warren deserved the Mackey Award, and he deserved it rightfully so. And right now, the Colts are starting the way that nobody thought they could, and that is a big reason why. And not to mention, if you thought that was crazy, look at what's going on around the rest of the NFL. The AFC division leaders, you'd think we'd be back in the late 2000s. Because the division leaders are the New England Patriots, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos, I don't know how they beat the New York Giants. The Giants led 18-0 at the start of the fourth quarter on Sunday. The Giants had just blown out the Eagles, and they were up 18 on the Broncos. And everyone said, oh, the Giants are now going to take storm of the NFC East. Philly should be on watch. Well, they let Bo Nix off the hook. And also, Brian Dable just got way too cute at the end of that game. And Jackson Dart, in my opinion, is a rising star, and so is Cam Scatterbo, but they got way too cocky, and it got the best of them in that game. And there's just, like, it's crazy how this year has gone in the NFL, because, like, think about this. The AFC North is a tank division. The Steelers are only 4-2 because of a 60-yard field goal by Chris Boswell, and not to mention they played the Patriots, who turned the ball over 3 times at the 1-yard line. Think about this. The Colts and Patriots should both be undefeated. The Patriots' first loss of the year was to the Raiders in week 1. That was a fluke. And then they fumbled 3 times at the 1-yard line against the Steelers. If you take away those 2 games away, New England's undefeated. They are undefeated, and they also have a 4-0 record on the road. And they've never had a 4-game winning streak at any point in their franchise history away from Gillette Stadium. That's something that Tom Brady and Bill Belichick never, ever did. And it speaks for itself. It just speaks for itself. Because, like, there's just been so much trauma this year in the NFL. Because, as I said, Buffalo's 4-2, but they have not looked very good, and they had a very, very easy schedule. The Ravens have been the biggest disappointment in football to this point with a 1-5 record. And who knows what's going to happen with Lamar Jackson going forward. Then you've got the Texans, who are 2-4. They got hammered last night by Seattle. And it wasn't anything that Seattle did. It's the fact that Houston just kept chopping themselves off the knees. And then you have Kansas City, who starts 0-2, and they've won 4 of their last 5 games, and people are now saying that they're the best team in football. I still think it's Indianapolis. The NFC is just as chaotic as the AFC. Because think about it. The Eagles are 5-2. They're the defending Super Bowl champions, but they only have a plus 5-point differential. And they were lucky that the Minnesota Vikings kept chopping themselves off at the knees on Sunday in that game. And it's good to see A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts finally get back on the same page, but the Eagles, they've got work to do. And I don't blame Brandon Graham for wanting to come back out of retirement, considering that Zadarius Smith retired and the Eagles' pass rush is in dire need of help at any point. But there are a few constants. The Lions starting 5-2, that is no surprise. They've proven outside of that Chiefs game that week 1 against Green Bay was a massive fluke. And who is the number 1 seed in the NFC right now? That can't be the Green Bay Packers, can it? Oh, it is, because they're 4-1-1, but they should have lost to the Cowboys. And the Cowboys really should be 4-3. Like, I am not surprised that they've gotten off to this start just because, like, I know they lost Micah Parsons, but they still have one of the best offenses in football. And Dak Prescott and George Pickens look outstanding, and they just got CeeDee Lamb back. Like, the NFC this year has been better than the AFC is by a country mile. Because, like, Tampa Bay started the year. They started the year 5-1. They got routed by Detroit last night. The 49ers, I don't know how they're 5-2. Some of it's due to an easy schedule, but also some of it is due to Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy covering a ton of flaws on the team. But Seattle's 5-2 as well. And some of it is, as I said, Sam Darnold looks really good, as does Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith and Jigba. And their defense, typical for Mike McDonald, has been good. But, like, I don't know what to think of, like, Seattle just because, like, a lot of it has been them escaping their own incompetence. Like, they escaped against Arizona. They escaped against Houston last night. And although Jacksonville, they hammered them. And what happened at Jacksonville? They beat Kansas City on Monday Night Football. And then they get routed by the Rams in London. And you know what the Rams did this week? They spent all week of practice at Camden Yards. I am blaming Baltimore City officials. You're really going to let the Rams take over Camden Yards for an entire week? I mean, come on. Just come on. But that happens, and it's just one of those crazy, crazy things. But we're almost at the midway point of the NFL season, and right now I just think that there's so much to be desired. Like, there could be a lot of teams that could turn this thing around. The Ravens could turn it around. They've got a soft schedule coming up. Hopefully Lamar Jackson is coming back. I don't know what to think of that. But Buffalo, they should be able to turn it around. I expect them to make a couple moves at the trade deadline. I expect the Chiefs to bolster the deadline. The Chargers to bolster the deadline. I could see Chicago making a couple moves. Like, hold on a second. How are the Carolina Panthers 4-3? Oh, right, because they've had an easy schedule and benefited from team self-destruction. That's why I think the NFL is so drunk this year, because you don't know who's good from a week-to-week basis. Like, you could say, oh, Indianapolis is the best team in football, and then watch them get beat. You could say Kansas City's not the best team in football. You could watch them get beat. And that's the great thing about the NFL, is that there's so much parity and there's so much uncertainty right now. And it's just like the NBA. These leagues have so much high drama now because the talent is spread out. And so is the NHL. I think we're going to get more into the NHL on the Thursday episode of Heckling with Hession, just because, like, there really hasn't been much going on. And I think right now, obviously, the main topics of discussion were the MLB, the NBA, and the NFL. But we're definitely going to be talking a lot of hockey for that Thursday show that will be right around the same time as right now. So, you know. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in this afternoon. I appreciate you guys taking the time to taking an hour to spend with me, talking sports, talking NBA, NFL, and Major League Baseball. For Thursday, we've got an NHL show coming up, and we've also got more NFL to talk about and also more NBA to talk about. Thanks for tuning in to the Heckling with Hession podcast. Yeah!